I'm Jake Appelman, a principal with FMI's Center for Strategic Leadership. We wrote the article in response to a client need, and our clients would articulate it differently than we may. And so what we hear from the owners of closely held construction businesses is that our next generation doesn't know how to assess risk accurately, struggle with identifying the next opportunity in their markets. And so we hear them say things like they need better business acumen, or they need to have a better nose for the market, and they use these abstract terms to describe what we think is really the ability to think strategically. And what we find is that when we've used that term, we've defined it using a specific model, it just clicks with a client. I don't think it's a surprise to most construction executives and engineering executives if you asked them to describe their daily life, they would describe VUCA. And so VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And while most wouldn't use that term to describe it, they would say that things are moving quicker than they ever have. It's harder to stay in contact with the market. It's harder to make sense of the data that's out there. And it's incredibly hard to take all that information, the flood of information that you get on a daily basis, and actually make sense of it. So there's a real risk in VUCA. But most don't assess the impact that it's having on them. They just say, well, I'm just stressed, I'm tired, and I can't make sense of things anymore. So the responses often go to the pole of overanalyze things, get all the data, get into that, get trapped by a flood and a mountain of data, which is incredibly hard to interpret. Or we just throw our hands up in the air and we say, look, we'll just take what the market gives us. And most of our clients are pretty strong at being opportunistic, but lose the actual discipline of developing strategic thinking and making sense of what the market tells you. And so part of what we've done is build out a Think Strategically model, which is a way of assessing the next generation of leaders' ability to do the types of thinking that's distinct from planning, just responding to the market. And so we found there's a huge difference between being opportunistic in the market, which most of our friends are very good at, versus thinking truly strategically and making decisions based on the data, based on a really accurate understanding of the market. And instead of going the traditional route of going deep into the model of thinking strategically, we wanted to push it at an individual level. And what we believe, and what the research would tell us, is that we're all deeply flawed in many ways, just in terms of how we process information. And we wanted to share some of those common mistakes and common traps we fall into just in terms of evaluating data, making decisions. One of the solutions is to assess how effective you are at strategic thinking. So one of the things our research team has done is build out a strategic thinking indicator, which is an actual assessment that you take that would baseline your performance in your ability to think strategically. And it will show where your strengths are, as well as some of your weaknesses. And we think that's a great tool to find your own strengths and weaknesses, and to take this vague concept of strategic thinking and actually put it into hard metrics and behaviors.